to the Kin Foundation Mainnet presentation, hosted by Masari. So today we're highlighting some recent initiatives across the ecosystem to further build governance and provide greater transparency. After today's presentation, there will be a Q&A at the end. My name is Matthew Hannam, and I'm joined today by William Magaya, who is the author of The Business Blockchain and director of the Kin Foundation Board. Before we get into the presentation, if you're not familiar with Kin, Kin is a digital currency shared amongst consumer applications, and its objective is to become the primary currency of the digital world. Think like intangible items that don't exist physically, like original content, art, filters, stickers, and more. So where Kin is at today, Kin is integrated in over 50 mobile phone applications, which you can find in the Google and Apple app stores. And presently, it averages about 3 million monthly active spenders. Since we launched in mid-2017, it's actually had more than 30 million unique accounts earn Kin. So it's worth noting that these stats only reflect usage within the ecosystem of consumer apps and not speculative trading or gambling outside the ecosystem, which is typically how other cryptocurrencies measure their use. If you're interested to see more about those stats or how they've been calculated, you can check out www.kin.org/stats. So now that you have a bit of idea about what Kin is, I'm going to hand over to William. If you can tell me a bit about yourself, the Kin Foundation, and the role you serve on the board.
Great, thanks very much, Matt. And hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So I'm a director in the Kin Foundation. And for background, the Kin Foundation was set up as a non-profit organization shortly after the initial token generation event in 2017. And the primary role of the Kin Foundation is to oversee the allocation of the Kin reserves via what we call the Kin Rewards Engine, the KRE. And that is a set of rules that govern the distribution of rewards based on specific usage metrics. It also includes the developer grants, user grants, and other programs that serve the community specifically. So let's talk about governance and transparency, because they are key aspects of building a functional, decentralized ecosystem. The Kin Foundation has been working very hard to create the right structural framework for Kin. So I've just talked about the foundation. Now, the second aspect is the federation itself. And the federation is really the Kin blockchain, which is a permissioned federation of 11 nodes operated by 10 different independent companies. Each one of these companies, excluding KIC, are compensated from the Kin reserves for operating a node. The distribution of Kin to each one of these node operators is done quarterly pursuant to a node validator agreement with the foundation. Then we also have the Kin Community Council, which was established earlier this year. It consists also of 10 members from the general ecosystem community that is active and participating in the discussions relating to the Kin ecosystem. They have been delegated responsibility to monitor the applications, to ensure that the applications abide by the ecosystem rules. For example, the Kin experience for end users of these applications need to meet certain basic standards. They also lead various community-driven initiatives like the Kin Community Rewards, where the contributions to the development of Kin are rewarded. Kapatin, which is a monthly community e-magazine that lets everyone stay up to date on the latest developments. The Council governance rules, for example, they require certain quorum to pass decisions. They do vote on decisions, and they have also the capacity to make decisions on certain matters within their own rights, but some more may be deferred to the Kin Foundation board for consideration. Fourthly, we have the Kin representatives, and that is the new body that we've recently introduced, that Matt is a member of, and it was established as an advisory board to act as a conduit between the Kin Foundation and the ecosystem community at large. The Kin representatives attend the Kin Foundation board meetings, and they are usually eligible to fill board positions at the Kin Foundation when they become available through the program. We are currently looking to expand this program and looking for adding more representatives. And we've recently written a blog post that outlines the process for doing that. Matt, you want to talk about your experience recently having joined the Kin representatives?
Yeah, sure. So I guess, as you mentioned, this is the most recent initiative. So I've been appointed a Kin representative now for about 3 months. So far, it's going well. So as part of that, I attend the monthly board meeting of the foundation. And I guess coming in, I had a preconception that when these board meetings occur, that it was just you and the other, your co-director, Ted Livingston, like sitting in a room. But, I've come to learn that the actual public or non-in-camera part of this board meeting, you're joined by a whole range of people and advisors across the ecosystem and third-party consultants who come to provide you advice so you can make decisions on which direction you're taking the ecosystem. So I've been really enjoying it. It's been quite interesting to see what's under the hood and see how all this gets put in place.
Great, thanks, Matt. And as I said, we look forward to expanding this group because it's been very beneficial to have you be a part of the community, join us and join your voice and your wisdom to what we are trying to do. Lastly, is the GitHub. Obviously, we use that for what we call the improvement proposals. Anyone can submit a proposal for the ecosystem by using GitHub. We chose GitHub because it's fairly simple. We don't want to overcomplicate things and add new processes, and it's very simple to submit a proposal on GitHub. And we have set up some basic templates so that we have some standards to make it easier for us to review them. And usually all proposals have been considered to date, and there have been some major proposals, actually, some major updates that were implemented as a result of these proposals, covering different aspects of the ecosystem. And some of them were very major. Some of them included a complete rewrite of something we had already done before. So we have accepted in full many of them, and in some cases they have replaced the existing methods, like the KRE transaction guidelines. And then lastly here, something new we just announced last week. We've just published a transparency report. And that took a lot of effort because it's the first one we did, so to be honest. But we're very proud of this report. A lot of people contributed to it. And it'll be the first of an annual series, perhaps more often, we'll see. If you're interested in reading it, have a look at the Kin Foundation subreddit or Reddit, and there's a link there. We've also co-published it with at Messari. We partnered with them to publish these reports as a central repository. You can download a full copy on Messari as well, and we'll also provide a link at the end of the presentation. The report goes into a lot of details about the Kin reserves, how the Kin Foundation board has budgeted these reserves, how we spent them, and where they went to. It also covers some aspects like where the nodes are, who are the independent third parties of the foundation, and how the compensation arrangements are done, the ones that are running the nodes. And we were motivated by two objectives, obviously, accountability in distributing the reserves. We know, and everybody knows where the money is going. And we wanted to fill the gaps so we can fuel the opportunities for growth in the ecosystem to ensure that its long-term success remains. So that's part of our tools and levers that we have is to allocate these reserves where it matters the most. Going forward, we're going to continue on being more decentralized because decentralization is not something that happens overnight. It doesn't happen by just flicking a switch. We need to consider it on a task-by-task basis. And there are usually three primary considerations that we keep in mind when deciding when and how to decentralize. So first, is it necessary? Is it mandatory to decentralize? Is there a law behind it that requires a particular entity to do something? For example, we cannot outsource the filing of certain tasks to the community. So we have to, for example, file government required filings when we have to. So that is not decentralized. Secondly, will decentralization add value to the project? So does it actually help us meet the objectives, or does it increase the economies of scale, and does it help us give us some synergy, for example? And thirdly, does it create too much risk? Sometimes you decentralize too quickly and it becomes a challenge to manage. Sometimes decentralization could look like chaos or like this organization. So we look at that and we want to make sure the project does not pivot too quickly, or that we miss opportunities, or that some things become a distraction. So we can take all of these things into consideration. Let's move on to the next part of our presentation, which is to talk about the KPIs and the ecosystem progress that I'm going to hand over to Matt to continue with that.
Thanks. Yes, so beyond active users and apps, we're also spending a lot of time to make sure that the monetary policies being put in place are the right ones. And in order to more effectively measure the Kin Foundation's effectiveness in allocating the Kin reserves, we've also begun measuring three key economic indicators that we believe reflect the health of the Kin economy. And these are the net dollars bought, or we call it NDB, the bought to issued ratio, and the Kin spent per day. So I'll take you through what each of these mean. The first is the net dollars bought is a metric. It directly reflects the amount of money being exchanged for Kin by consumers. So net dollars bought is calculated as the Kin purchased, which can be directly or it can be indirectly via alternative methods such as viewing ads, for goods or services by users through in the Kin ecosystem, and then minus all Kin paid by the Kin Foundation through KRE and grants. So looking at the slides, to date, the Kin rewards engine has primarily rewarded developers for getting their users to spend Kin. While this doesn't directly incentivize net dollars bought, it is a requisite precursor to getting people into the economy who will transition into buyers. And to facilitate that, the KRE has evolved and has begun to reward the generation of real demand via the buy track, which should result in a positive impact on NDB. The next one is the bought to issued ratio. This ratio describes how much Kin is bought for goods and services per Kin issued by the Kin Foundation all time. This is expressed as a positive that reflects the amount of Kin being purchased by consumers. So as you can see here, this number is climbing, especially quickly after the implementation of the Kin Rewards Engine 2.0, which rewards the generation of buy demand. So as payouts to developers become more weighted toward the creation of demand, we could see this number rise even more quickly. So you can kind of think of this buy pressure to support the Bitcoin block reward. The next one is Kin spent per day. So this one is the Kin economy's GDP, the amount of Kin spent on goods and services per day. Metrics like monthly active spenders, that number of ecosystem participants, but the Kin spent per day captures their actual spending behavior. So what this graph shows is the amount of kin spent per day within the kin ecosystem of consumer apps is actually multiplied since the implementation of the KRE 2.0 and the incentivization of higher volume spending. Developers have leveraged this opportunity to create refined user experiences that have resulted in much higher spending. So overall, as reflected by this data, the kin economy, it's healthy and it's lively, and there's continued growth in key areas that function as indicators of its vibrancy. As the ecosystem continues to evolve, these statistics should mature in parallel, and by refining the parameters through which success is messaged, the Kin Foundation will be able to have an increasingly positive impact in fostering the growth of this new digital economy. You can stay tuned for our community by regular updates on these key metrics as we continue to monitor and report on the state of the Kin economy.
Thanks, Matt. So that's all we have to share today. And the last slide has a series of links that indicate where you can find us, where you can get up to date on what we are doing. So please do stay in touch. And now we will take some questions from the audience. Thanks.
Just a couple questions from the audience. So this first one is, I guess it was recently announced that Kin would be migrating over from a Stellar fork to the Solana blockchain. So I think it'd just be good to kind of hear the thought process behind the transition, kind of what incentives were provided to switch over, and kind of what you guys expect to get out of the migration.
That's a very good question. We are currently trying to figure this out completely. We have a call next week, actually, with this week with Solana to discuss these details. I can't go into details because they haven't been totally worked out, but I'm sorry to disappoint in my answer. But you can be assured that when the process is finalized, that we will be outlining it very clearly, and any kin holder will be able to know exactly what they have to do. But it's going in the right direction. That's all I can say right now.
Gotcha. I guess maybe then could you just discuss the reasons for wanting to migrate in the first place?
It was an evolution that we felt was required, and because the current blockchain had we had encountered some limitations in terms of the in the speed and the transaction volume that were necessary. So it was kind of a good problem to have when you are running against some speed issues or some technical issues as a result of the increased usage. Typically, it takes a bit of time to resolve it, and we felt that we had kind of reached a dead end in terms of trying to optimize for where we were today. And after looking at many different options, we decided that the Solana blockchain would fit the best our needs, because we are very cognizant of always the user experience coming first, and we didn't want to compromise on the user experience. As you know, some other blockchains are more difficult to use from a non-technical level. So you can get faster, you can go through shortcuts, but it requires a technically savvy user. And for us, it's the opposite. Our users are just regular users. They are Web 2 users. They expect the highest levels of experience, and that's kind of why we did that. Yep.
And I guess kind of a related question. I guess beyond the Kick app, which I guess was kind of the first use case for the Kin blockchain, what kind of use cases do you imagine the Kin blockchain serving, especially with the idea in mind that you need kind of like Web 2 scale, you need Web 2 levels of throughput, kind of those considerations that you could laid out for why Kin is migrating to Solana blockchain.
So sorry. So what's the question? Can you?
So I guess kind of like beyond the Kick application, what are some other use cases for the Kin blockchain you imagine?
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like laying out the vision.
Yeah. I mean, there are 50 different applications that, and each one has more than one way that users can earn Kin or spend Kin. For example, Rave. You can it's a way to earn Kin by watching Netflix or YouTube with friends. I'm just going through there's Mad Libs, there's Tap Talk, Swelly, Perfect 365. There's like different types of socially. Most of the apps are social media, social networking kind of related. If any listener can go to and download the transparency report, we've outlined all of these apps, even going to kin.org. All of these apps are highlighted, and soon there's going to be a wallet that's going to unify all of these applications together, so that users can earn Kin and spend it seamlessly almost between the different apps. I just want to make a small correction that the Solana project is a proposal, so it hasn't been accepted yet. But it's a proposal that's moving along. It hasn't been confirmed, but it's kind of in the proposal stages.
Gotcha. That was going to actually be my next question is what is the community's involvement in the migration process?
Right now, the community involvement is in getting their feedback. The proposal has been proposed by Kik. It's on GitHub. It's a fairly elaborate proposal that is quite detailed. And we've started to receive some feedback from it. The community is debating it. We're adding feedback to it. And that's part of being decentralized from a decision-making point of view. Ultimately, we'll take all of the input and we'll decide what happens to the nodes, to the incentives, and what happens to the Kin reserves. But we're currently totally in the middle of this process right now. So you want to think of Kin as a digital currency, as a currency that any consumer can use in an increasingly in an increasing number of apps that are, most of them have a social media, social networking, social participation kind of focus in mind.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you, Will. So next up, we have Monero. I guess real quick, if anyone wants to learn more about, or reach out to you or learn more about Kin, where should they go?
Kin.org. We'll have all the links to it, or the Reddits. We're also on Medium. We have a blog post on Medium, and we're very easy to be found. And Twitter.
All right. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.